Hello, and in this module we're going to be talking about creating equations from expressions and finding the slope on a graph. So there are some important concepts to know for this section. So the first is constant of proportionality. So this is when two quantities have a proportional relationship. So there exists a constant of proportionality between the quantities. So for example, if an apple costs $1, then 2 apples cost $2. So if we are reading an equation and it says 1 apple costs $1 and Katie gets 3 apples, you know that that's $3 because that is the constant of proportionality. There's also a work unit rate. So this is a unit rate that expresses a quantity of one thing in terms of 1 unit of another. So for example, if a train moves at 50 miles every 2 hours, a unit rate expresses this comparison in terms of 1 hour. So in 1 hour, you travel 25 miles. So your unit rate is 25 miles per hour. So if we're creating equations from expressions, an equation is a statement that two expressions are equal. So 2 fewer than 8 times a number equals 54. So our equation would be 2 fewer than 8 times a number. So 8 times a number is 8n, and 2 fewer would be minus 2. This tells us equals 54. So this is our equation, equals 54. An inequality is a statement that two expressions are unequal, and it uses the terms greater than or less than. So a number divided by 5 is greater than 16. So our equation would be a number divided by 5 is greater than, now let's remember our alligator is eating the bigger number, so this is greater than 16. So 3 times the number is less than 121 divided by 3. So our equation would be 3 times the number is less than, so alligator's pointing at the bigger one, 121 divided by 3. So those would be the way we would write those equations from those expressions. So we also want to be able to translate word problems when it comes to inequalities. So you'll see words like equals, is equal to, is, was, were, will be, yields, is the same as, amounts to, becomes. So we need to know what this means. So is greater than or is more than is going to give us the alligator eating the bigger number. So something is greater than something else. So we would use this symbol. Is greater than or equal to, is at least, is no less than is going to give us that alligator pointing to the bigger number, but also equal to. So right, because we have or equal to. So you have that little line under it. And then same is less than is fewer than. So our alligator's pointing at the big number, which means whatever's on this side is less than. So less than, and then if it's less than or equal to, is at most, is no more than, we have that less than or equal to sign. So 10 more than twice. Our equation would be, so we have 10 more than twice. So that would be twice would be 2x, and 10 more than that would be plus 10. If you guys pause this slide, you can maybe think about what the next 3 would be, and then we will go over the answers in the next slide. All right, so we went over the first one. Let's keep going. So 5 less than 3 times the number would be 3 times the number is going to be 3x, and it's 5 less, so minus 5. The product of a number and 10. So a product is multiplication, right? Because if it was addition, it would be sum, but product is multiplication. So the product of a number and 10 would be 10x or 10y. This says y, but you can use any variable, any letter for your variable. 4 times the number is less than 100 divided by 25. So this is not giving us something that is equal to. It is saying less than. So we're using our alligator pointing at the bigger number. So we know this is a less than. And it's 4 times the number. So 4n is less than 100 divided by 25. That's how you would write those. So now a rational expression. So Katie and Jane play soccer every week. Katie and Jane like to kick the ball at the open net. Katie can make 2 more goals per minute than Jane. On Wednesday, Katie made 10 goals in the same time it took Jane to make 5. How fast are Katie and Jane making goals? So there's a lot of words. This can sound very tricky. These are the types of things you're going to see on the TEAS exams. So let's go through it. So Katie and Jane play soccer every week. Katie can make 2 more goals per hour than Jane. On Wednesday, Katie made 10 goals in the same amount of time it took Jane to make 5. How fast are Katie and Jane making goals? So what do we know? We know that Katie can make 2 more goals per hour than Jane, right? Because it tells us this right here. Okay, we know that on Wednesday, Katie made 10 goals in the same amount of time that Jane made 5. We know how many goals each player made in an unknown amount of time and their rate relative to the other player. The values that can be set as equal are the times it took each player to make shots. Even though you don't know the values for the time, you know it's the same for both players. So for example, we have Katie made 10 goals at a rate of 2 more than Jane per hour. So that's going to be 10 over x plus 2 because our time is going to be x, and we know that in that amount of time she made 2 more than Jane. So that's x plus 2. So let me move this because I'm blocking half the equation. Hold on. This is ridiculous. All right, so this would be equal to Jane's goals of 5 over an hour. So 5 over x is going to be Jane's goals. So we have Katie's and we have Jane's. So we can set these equal to each other because we know that in 1 hour span, Katie is making 10 goals at a rate of 2 more per than Jane. And we know that Jane's goals are 5 over an hour. So can set them equal to each other. So 10 over x plus 2 equals 5 over x. We will need to cross multiply. So you're going to have 10x equals 5 times x plus 2, which will be written like this. When you solve this out, you'll do 5 times x plus 5 times 2. So you'll get 10x equals 5x plus 10. Now we're going to subtract 5x from both sides because we want to get x on one side of the equation. It now becomes 5x equals 10. We can divide both sides by 5 so that we get x on one side. So this will cancel out. This will become 2. So x equals 2. So the answer is we're going to take that 2 and we're going to plug it into our first equations that we had. So Katie's speed is 10 over 5 plus 2, which is 1.42 goals per hour. And Jane's speed is going to be 5 over 5 because it's 5 over x, which is 1 goal per hour. And that is how you would figure out that equation. That one's a little tricky. So then we're also going to have things called polynomial expressions. So Tina buys apple pies for $3 each. She also buys 5 blueberry pies. The total that Tina spends is $21. So write an equation that shows the connection between the numbers of apples and blueberry pie. All right, so we have our apple pies and our blueberry pies. So A will stand for apple pies and B will stand for blueberry pies. So 3A is the number of apple pies because the apple pies are $3 each. And we know that 5B is going to stand for the blueberry pies because she buys 5 blueberry pies. And so 3A plus 5B equals 21. So that is going to be our equation. And the reason that this is because we know the cost of the apple pies, but we don't know how many. And we know how many blueberry pies, but we don't know the cost. So if we did know the cost and the amount, it would be the cost of the pie times the amount of pies. So that's why here it's $3 for an unknown number of apple pies. So it's 3A plus we have 5 blueberry pies, but we don't know how much they cost. So the cost is the B, and that's going to equal 21. That is breaking that down a little more. All right, so some important concepts. So we're moving on to slopes. So a slope is the value of the slope is positive. The line has an upward direction from left to right. If the value of the slope is negative, the line has a downward direction from left to right. So it's rise over run. So for example, this is a positive slope, right? It's going up. But say the slope was going this way. Well, that would be a negative slope. So that's sort of what that's talking about. The equation used to find the slope, which is written as m in math, of a line gives 2 coordinates on that line. So given 2 coordinates. So slope equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So this is the y-axis. It always runs up and down the y, and the x goes across this way. So we have our y-axis, we have our x-axis. So we want to find, so you can see here it says rise over run. So we want to find, if we look at our y-axis, so this point would be our y1 and x1, right? This is our first point, y1 and x1. So over here it's written x1, y1. And over here it's going to be x2, y2. And we would plug those numbers in up here. So our y2 goes here, our y1 goes here, our x2 goes here, our x1 goes here, and that will give us the slope. So for example, this is 1, 2, so this is going to actually be 2 over 1, 2, 3, 4. So 2 over 4. So that would be reduced to 1/2. That would be the slope of this. This one would be 1, 2, 3 over 1, 2, 3. So this would actually be 1. But yeah, if you didn't have a graph and you were just finding it another way, they just gave you the points. It's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So graphing and solving inequalities. So solving inequalities can be done with the same rules as for solving equations. When multiplying or dividing by a negative number, the direction of the inequality sign must be flipped or reversed. An example of an inequality is 10x is greater than 5. So to solve for x, you're going to divide both sides by 10, and the solution is going to be x equals 5 over 10 or 1/2. This equation has no negative numbers, so we don't have to worry about things being flipped or reversed. But let's say we want to graph and solve the following inequality. So graph 20 is greater than negative 4x plus 8. So to graph the inequality, you need to solve for x. The opposite of addition is subtraction, so we are going to subtract 8 from both sides because remember, we want to try to get x on one side and then the numbers on the other. So we subtract 8, we get 12 is greater than negative 4x. Now, the opposite of multiplication is division, so we're going to divide both sides by negative 4, but we need to remember to flip the inequality symbol because we're dividing by a negative number. So now what's going to happen is we're going to divide both sides by 4. This will cancel out. This is going to become negative 3 because 12 divided by negative 4 is negative 3. And this sign is going to flip because it's we're dividing by a negative number. So now we have negative 3 is less than x. So we can also rewrite this as x is greater than negative 3. So we could graph x is greater than negative 3. And so if we were going to graph this, we would find negative 3 on the graph. So this is 0, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. You just do a dotted line up and down, and all of this is shaded because what that means is x could be any of these numbers. All right, so that is the end of this module. Make sure to do the worksheets, check the answer key, take the quiz, and I will see you in the next module. Bye.